Hello, everybody, and welcome to the week 6 in the Dementia Information Series. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. And tonight we are actually going to have 3 speakers, and I'm pleased to introduce 2 of our guest speakers tonight from the Halton Police, and our 3rd speaker will be Vinitha Nair, one of the caregiver educators. So if I can have Derek and Michelle turn on your cameras, please.
Come on, there I am.
All right, we're all set?
Should be, yep.
Okay, and Michelle?
Yes, all set. I'm here.
Sorry, I can't see you. I apologize.
Oh,
Having
that's
technical
okay.
problems. So welcome to both of you. And we've got Detective Constable Derek Gray, who is an older adult abuse and financial crime investigator, and also a member of LHIN, the Law Enforcement Agencies Protecting Seniors in Burlington. And he's going to be presenting first, and followed by Michelle Barclay, who is a victim support coordinator with Halton Police. I'm sure both of them will explain more fully what their roles are. Michelle has been in that position for 3 years, but before that, she actually volunteered with them for several years, 15 years, I believe. So I'm going to turn it over to Derek. And Derek, would you like us to put your slideshow up and move your slides, or would you like to do it yourself?
No, you can do it. I'm just trying to get it to work here on my screen, and my slides hasn't popped up here yet, but I'm gonna try and work some technology wonders here.
Okay, Tala, do you want to pull the slideshow up? Derek's slideshow up, please. Okay, I think we are ready. So I'm going to turn off my camera. Michelle and I are going to turn off our cameras and mute. And Derek, the floor is yours. And when you need Tala to change the slide, please just say change or switch. Thank you.
Okay, perfect.
Great.
Well, welcome everyone to this evening's presentation. My goal today really is to give you some information about frauds and scams and the way police are involved with older adults, and really find a way that you can come away feeling a little bit more secure, a little bit more safe in our community, and have more resources at your disposal. So first, when we talk about the older adult community, we can go to the next slide. When we look in Burlington, we look at about 20% of the population is over 65, and about 14% in Oakville, and almost 12% in Milton of the population is over 65 years old. So those aren't really alarming numbers. That's the baby boomer generation getting older. And there's more people requesting services such as dementia care. People are getting resources from the community, such as things like diabetes. People are getting involved in lots of programming for seniors at the senior center in Burlington. And then unfortunately, some older adults interact with police in a variety of ways. And some of those you may have already experienced as care providers. And we can go to the next slide. Should be right there. When we look at some of the dementia numbers, and these change almost, new research on a monthly basis, our population isn't necessarily getting older. It's the number of people who are reaching that age based on that growth and birth rate from the 1940s and 50s and onwards. Then when we look at dementia, we think now about 1 in 10 families have someone with some sort of dementia or cognitive impairment. And we look at, in the future, 5 to 10 years from now, the ratio may be as low as 1 to 2 families dealing with someone with the cognitive decline or dementia living at home. And we'll go to the next slide. So when we think about dementia, often I teach at the police college, and I teach level 3 recruits here in Burlington and for the Halton region. And we often get this mixed up where dementia is really the umbrella of things that could go wrong with your cognitive ability or your brain. And then Alzheimer's is one of those things that we typically hear in the news or in media. There's about, I think at last check, about 112 different kinds of dementia because dementia is a disease, as we know, that affects how your brain works. So it depends on what symptoms are displayed and what kind of Alzheimer's dementia you may have. We can go to the next slide. And this is how commonly we interact with a lot of older adults. We see motor vehicle collisions, some hit and run accidents, even just a small bump and run in the parking lot where people are backing up and they don't know genuinely they've hit someone or bumped into a car. We see erratic driving. So people driving too fast, too slow, overly cautious, turning corners and going up curbs and down curbs. And especially in parking lots, trying to navigate all of the different concrete barriers to go through drive-throughs or the gas station or getting into car washes. We see often people having difficulties in navigating those things. We see some shoplifting in a sense that it's not older adults that are going out shoplifting. It's older adults who are living with dementia that may have 1 or 2 items in a bag, and then they pay for 1 or 2 items and they've forgotten they have more items to pay for. They pay for some of them and then they leave the building. And that's kind of how we interact with some shoplifting things. We do see some older adults living at home, both alone and with partners with living with dementia, and they report people breaking into their homes. They report things missing. They report weird noises, weird things that are happening to them. And I've seen everything on the spectrum from raccoons in the attic, and that's actually what they're hearing, all the way to believing the person from the service provider or Cogeco, whoever was in the house last, must have stolen the ring they haven't found for 5 years. All of those things, obviously can get reported to communications. An officer will come out to assist them and try and help them with the problem that's going on and dig in a little bit and see what's going on. The other place that my sort of area in Halton region is I do a lot of work with obviously financial crime. So that is everything from money, people with power of attorney issues, lost wallets, identification, stolen purses, and any one of the frauds and scams that you might hear about. We're going to talk about that a few slides from now that's coming up. We can go to the next slide. And we look at some other major areas where we interact is the financial victimization of seniors, those phone calls that they get in the morning about the CRA or owing money or some sort of grandparent scam. It's very popular right now. We deal with the majority of things that we see sometimes we associate with Alzheimer's dementia is wandering or missing people. They go for a walk every day. They walk the same track and they've had one misstep and they're in a different part of the neighborhood. They don't know how to find their way back home. That's often the case. We do have some people who are still driving with us and they end up driving their car to the dentist. They never make it to the dentist. They miss 1 or 2 exits and they end up in Toronto or they can't find their way back home. We do a lot of well-being checks, and that is loved ones from out of town. I haven't talked to my mom in a few days. I can't find her. She's got some medicine and I can't get her on the phone. So communications will send uniformed patrol officers to check on the residents in Burlington or anywhere in Halton region and see if they're okay and check on their well-being. And then we do get a lot of mental health calls that are related to families at home, dealing with loved ones who have dementia, Alzheimer's. We even get calls for people who have diabetes and sometimes are not themselves and refusing medications with ambulance. So we'll go and help them with those kinds of things and try and smooth them over and get them the services that they need. We can go to the next slide. When we look at this statistic, this is from a few years ago, but we look at all different kinds of older adult abuse. And I should preface that in my unit, I changed the name to Older Adult Abuse and Financial Crime. We used to be called the Vulnerable Persons Unit. We used to be called the seniors unit or the elders unit. And really, when we look at that abuse, it is older adults, people over 65 years old. And when we say elder or senior or vulnerable person, we don't mean to be disrespectful by anybody. We hope we can call people by their first name when we meet them. And if, I know my dad wants to be called a senior, to be a senior citizen, to get his discount per se. But when we look at seniors, there's an alarming statistic that we only see, 1 in 14 things ever come to us. We know from the Canadian Anti-Fraud Centre that all of their reporting for all their statistical keeping, only 1 in 10 or 10% of the actual amounts of fraud in Canada get reported to the Canadian Anti-Fraud Centre. So when we look at that statistic, there's a lot of things that are going on in our community that we could possibly help with that are not being reported. We'll go on to the next one. And when we look at elder abuse or older adult abuse, we've seen some commercials and things. We know about physical abuse, psychological or emotional abuse. There is sexual abuse in some long-term care homes that we see a little bit about. The majority of it, about 90% of it, is actual financial exploitation or fraud. And then we do see incidents of neglect or abandonment. Some of these issues in neglect or abandonment are related to lack of knowledge and having care service or care providers in the home for the older adult. And some of the things we see when we look at excessive collecting or hoarding issues, we see a lot with people with a well-being check that we talked about, where we find them that they've been living alone for 10, 15, 20 years and never really had the services that they don't know, or they don't have the resources available to them to get more services in their home to help them with a better quality of life. We go to the next slide. So when we look at frauds and scams in the next section here, and I don't know if there's a way to do questions and answers along the way, or if Sandy, if you wanted me to do questions as we go through this.
Yeah, we can certainly do that, Derek. There's none yet, but if people do have questions, I will, at an appropriate point, I'll stop and ask you if that's okay.
Yeah, and yeah, they'll pop up for anybody who's new, like me, to technology. If you go to the bottom of your screen and you scroll over, there's a chat. There's like a little circle cartoon bubble in the chat forum. You could post any question there about frauds and scams, and we'll try and get those answered up for you.
Actually, sorry, Derek, I apologize for interrupting. The chat is actually disabled, but the Q&A, we have a Q&A, just 2 boxes to the left of that.
Perfect, perfect.
So people can submit their question, and you can read that as you go, Derek, or I can monitor them and let you know. Okay?
Yeah, I'll probably just talk if you can refresh my memory as we go along, because I will just go on with the presentation and we want to get these things answered.
Okay, super. I'll do that. Thanks, Derek.
Perfect. So when we look at frauds and scams, we typically think about the con artist. We think of someone who is really essentially telling you a lie for financial gain. It's really that simple. If you think of your favorite movie or TV program, it's 2-3 hours to figure out who the bad guy is, and there's usually a car chase and there's some sort of mystery behind it. And all of a sudden at the end of the movie, you're like, oh, it's that guy. That's kind of my job. In the background, that's the investigation part of it. But being a victim of a fraud or scam, it's relatively simple, because it's simply someone's told you something, or you form a belief about something that simply isn't true, and you end up giving money for whatever that product or service might be. So we can go to the next slide. And there is 1 or 2 resources that I've left with Sandy from Consumer Protection Ontario. They have the Little Black Book of Scams, and that covers a lot of the material we're going to talk about tonight. Just on, it's more in depth if you wanted to go through that. And one of the things that we have, they're actually at our grocery stores right now. If everybody can see this, they're little cards we're having at most of the grocery stores in Burlington and in Milton. All the tips are here, and they're right here on the screen for you. when we talk about our purse, and this is ladies and men with your wallets, your giant wallets full of everything, we really, we encourage people in the new year when you're out shopping, both for care providers and the older adults you're out with, we're really trying to find a way to minimize risk. And what I mean by that is some people carry 10 different cards in their wallet, all with the same PIN number. Some people carry 4 or 5 different cards. The minimal amount of risk you could have if you were shopping in your purse or wallet would be your health card and driver's license, 1 credit card, 1 debit card, and each card having a different PIN number. If you somehow lost your wallet or purse, that's not a lot to replace and report to police. A lot of people have things in their purses and wallets like birth certificates, social insurance numbers. A lot of people like to carry around passports. Not lately, you haven't gone out of the country anywhere, but those get left in the bottom of some ladies' purses because ladies' purses are a catch-all for all the family stuff. And a lot of people also in their purse carry, when we go grocery shopping, we put it in the buggy in front of us and the cell phone goes in, the car keys go in, and their wallet is there. So you can imagine now if that gets stolen in the grocery store, someone's got your car keys, someone's got your cell phone. And then if you have some of those identity documents that are in there, that person could essentially become you, create identity online, and then go shopping. So we're trying to avoid that. One of the things we saw this year is a bunch of individuals come through Halton region, and at grocery stores, they would wait at the front or the end of the line behind you. They would do what's called shoulder surfing. So looking over your shoulder while you're punching in your personal identification number and it's not covered up. And then someone in the parking lot would distract you. And then they would end up pickpocketing or stealing your purse or wallet. The 2 or 3 culprits would meet up. They would have both your PIN number and your credit card. You might be none the wiser. They would go shopping for a couple of days until you figured out your card was missing. And then unfortunately, there's a lot of legwork with the bank and getting your cards closed off and then tracking down where they've gone to spend money. But the easiest way to avoid that, obviously, is to have 2 different personal identification numbers. A lot of people pick numbers that are easy to remember. Unfortunately, those would be things like your year of birth or your numeric street address or any number on any other card that's actually in your wallet or purse would be something that should not be your PIN number. If you picked your wife's or husband's date of birth or your children's date of birth, that might be easy to remember, but that's not something that's going to be in your purse or wallet that they could guess. Your PIN number also shouldn't be 1, 2, 3, 4. It's very simple. Lots of people actually have that as their PIN number. And when we look at other ways to be safer, I know Sandy and I talked a bit last week about tap and using the tap function of your debit card or your credit card. That really is essentially allowing the bank to access your card for the purchase. You tap the card, you take it from your wallet to the tap machine, back in your wallet. No one gets to know your PIN number. It's the safest and most secure way to go shopping. And then to refresh people's memory, if we're shopping online, on the back of every card, there's a CVC code. And what that essentially is it tells the merchant that the card is not present when the purchase was made. It was an online purchase. So if you're using that online, if we're shopping online and we're using our identity and we're creating a profile online, we always need to make sure that we see on the screen HTTPS, which is for secure, and whatever website you're going to. If you're going to marksandwarehouse.com or bestbuy.ca, you will have searched out the website, know where you're going to buy something, and then have documentation and paperwork to print out approving your transaction. And then, unfortunately, at the bottom here, there's some information. If you have your wallet or purse stolen, the first thing to do is call your bank, have them freeze your accounts, and then call police and report those items that are stolen. And we'll come out and visit you at home, take a report from you, and then add your items to the stolen list for other police services if they get recovered. And then we can track any use on your credit card. So we'll go to the next slide. I'll stick it. So when we look at any one of the frauds and scams, and this is not to say that the sky is falling. It's not. There's lots of frauds and scams out there. There's lots of way to lose your money. But when we look, I usually have about 10 frauds that come across my desk every month. That isn't a lot because, much like purse thefts as well, in the Halton region, there's about 100 purse thefts a year. It's unfortunate if your purse gets stolen, but when we compare that to the number of shopping incidents in the city, if you look at just Burlington Costco on a Saturday, there's 4,000 people going to Costco. No purses get stolen. So when you look at that number, it seems high, and it's very unfortunate when it happens. But we can definitely, with some education that we're doing tonight and some resources, we can bring that number even lower and have less incident of fraud and theft in the city. When we look at frauds and scams, they evolve. One of the biggest things that I tell people, and we used to teach, for example, the grandson scam or the lottery scam works a certain way. And then the next year, the bad guys will fortunately learn how we catch them, change it from phone to email, get the same information, and then the fraud would be perpetrated that way. And a lot of people used to say, oh, like, I thought the grandson scam was only on the phone. Well, it could be by email. It just depends on how you receive the information. And it depends on how you're actually providing information to the bad guy. So generically, when I talk about all these scams, each one typically has its own way of happening, but it can happen on other media formats. It just depends on how you're providing that information. One of the most popular ones and still going on is the Canada Revenue Agency scam. Typically, it's that phone call in the morning we get, and it's 7 a.m. or 7:30. It's a very muddled voice, a robotic computer sounding voice. You know, this is Canada Revenue Agency calling, or CRA, and there's a warrant for your arrest. You need to pay us X amount of dollars in Google Play cards or Apple Play cards in order to avoid getting arrested. Don't contact anyone. Don't tell anyone about it. Lots of phone calls like that. Things like that we have seen a recent rise in. The grandson scam, which is the same thing, getting a phone call early in the morning. And it's, you know, hi, grandma, it's me. And unfortunately, a lot of people early in the morning are not good. I know I need 2 or 3 cups of coffee myself. And a lot of people simply answer, oh, Jeffrey, is that you? Oh, yeah, grandma, it's me, Jeffrey. I was in a car accident, or I was skiing, or I was somewhere I shouldn't be. Don't tell mom. I need some money for, you know, hospital fees or lawyer fees or getting out of jail. Any one of those scams, it's simply an adaptive twist on the same scam. So any kind of family member being involved in any accident would be traumatic. And of course, they've reached out to you and they want your help, but they won't let you off the phone. You can't sort of check with that grandson's parents to see where they actually are, or let anybody else know what's going on. And so we end up going through a payment scheme, such as gift cards or Google Play cards, Steam online gaming cards. I mean, these things typically are not how the Canadian government or any law enforcement agency or any lawyer's office want to get paid in Apple iTunes cards. Bitcoin is another good example that's cropping up. It is not a legitimate currency used in the Canadian banking system, and the government does not want Bitcoin to pay your Canada Revenue Agency bill. A lot of the scams we see here, if people, and I have them coming up, and I think everyone's got to copy this presentation as well, we really need to look at how we control our data and really be our own Sherlock Holmes. That's really the only way. Any one of these scams, we could spend hours on each of these scams, but they all come down to the same 2 or 3 common elements. I think that's in the next slide. If we'll go to the next slide. We sort of covered this. I can go back to this one in a minute. Go to the next slide. I can't remember where I put it. Yeah, so here's, nope. So we'll go backwards one slide there, right there. When we look at all frauds and scams, there's always a level of secrecy and a level of emergency built into every single fraud and scam. The pressure sales tactic would be something like an emergency. If you don't do this now, you're going to lose out on this great deal. If it was, for example, the lottery scam, you've won $1.2 million. We need this legal fee of $1,000 to get your money to you. And if you don't respond in the next 12 minutes, we're going to lose this money and we can't reimburse you for your $1.2 million. And of course, the secrecy part of it is keep your winning secret. Don't tell anyone. Don't let the bank know, because if the bank finds out you have to pay tax on that money, there's always a reason why we can't ask for help. There's always a reason why we can't seek further advice from a friend, a neighbor, a spouse. And there's always that level of emergency, such as we talked about in the CRA scam. If you don't do this, you're going to get arrested. And nobody wants to get arrested in front of their family members. And all those scams are all based on some level of reality, which makes you believe in your own mind when you're shocked and you have that a bit of, ooh, I'm not sure. Some people listening tonight may be behind in paying their taxes. Some people might have an accountant doing their taxes. So when I suggest to the group, some of you may have an issue with your tax bill this year. There might be one or two people who are like, oh, yeah, that's me. I didn't do last year's taxes. And so that's how those scams are perpetrated. There's a small lie. It could be possible. And then it just snowballs into this payout at the end of the fraud. And the solutions here we're talking about really is, it's why we talked about purse thefts, knowing where your identity documents are, knowing and controlling your data, who's got your personal information, what are they going to use it for. Many people go online and they have many different accounts online. Every single department store has an account with a preloaded credit card that's there for payment. You're actually providing your information to a third party that you hope is secure. Most likely it is, but if you reduce the number of places you could find your personal information online, reduce the number of items that are in your wallet and purse that other people might get access to, you're really reducing your risk of harm should something happen and someone gets hold of your information. One of the things too in knowing your data and confirming your data is really the best way to combat any fraud. If someone comes to your front door and wants to do a quote for roofing, okay, I personally would be getting a quote in writing, a business card. I should see their truck, their uniform. I could check them out online using Google search. I could search their company, Bob's East Troughs and Roofing Repair. I would look at reviews of the company. I would look under Better Business Bureau to see if there's any complaints. And that's really being your own Sherlock Holmes. You really need to investigate what you're seeing in front of you. Is this real? We can go back one slide. And then this is sort of the way when we look at those purse thefts and identity items, all of our data is out there. It used to just be the phone book many years ago, but now we're in reports, we're on social media, we are on different kinds of text messages. We get things sent to our phone and iPad devices where we open emails. Two examples I'll bring up is I got a phone call last week from a bank that I don't bank with telling me that there was something wrong with my account and they wanted to confirm my social insurance number, my driver's license, and my account online. But I don't bank with them. So, I mean, I already knew it was a scam. If your bank's going to call you and there's a legitimate problem with any one of your financial cards, they're going to say, please come in the branch and see us. There's a problem with your card. And that's it. They're not going to exchange information with you online. That's because they want to see you in person with the form of ID and your card. And then they're going to help you at the branch level, human to human. For those people listening who are still doing human-to-human banking, if you're secure in that way and that's the way you want to continue banking, that's the best practice, is for you to continue banking human to human, and you don't have to use technology necessarily to get the same results. And then the one there at the very end, the phishing emails, we do see emails that come from a wide variety of sources, such as banks, generic newsletter scams online. Fill out this survey, and all of a sudden you're filling out your name, date of birth, address, phone number, different things like that. We're giving away free pieces of that identity package that is really becoming ourselves. And for one example, we look at social media. I think social media is great for isolated adults connecting with family members. If you know how to set the security protocols in it, it can be very useful to feel less isolated and part of a family network. But my stepmother, when she did her social media profile, she's very excited to be on Facebook now. She filled out the questionnaire, and she filled out every single question: name, date of birth, address, phone number, past employer, all the schools, absolutely everything. She filled all of it out. So essentially, when it went on her email, looked up her Facebook account, she essentially has given away every single piece of her identity, with the exception of her driver's license number and her social insurance number. So I got her to edit her profile down to like first name, last name, maybe city you used to live in, and then, you know, an old high school. Anybody you want to find, you go and find them, and other people will eventually find you if that's what you want to do. Go to the next slide. I think we're almost towards the end of my part and my time here. It's about half an hour's up. Sandy, how are we doing for time?
You're good, thank you. We're good.
Okay. And this is really, Sandy has the Protect Your Purse cards that she can email out, the little black book of scams. I have a campaign right now in the grocery stores that are Protect Your Purse cards are out there. There's some new information going out on Twitter for a lot of the care providers who are more technology based. Every Sunday or Monday, there's a new flyer going out for the next 4 weeks, talking about frauds and scams, online shopping, purse thefts, things like that. You need to help your older adults in your life, make sure their finances are taken care of. And one of the things that I sort of forgot to mention is for a lot of the older adults, we used to, and this is the main reason that fraud and scams happen, it comes back to controlling your data, but we used to spend Sunday together as a family, and then people would sit and review their finances. You'd reconcile your checkbook, you'd count the cash you had, and figure out where your budget was for the week or the month. That's what we used to do 20, 30 years ago. Some people still do it now, but now with electronic banking, different credit cards, statements, there's a lot of data that's coming at us all the time, and we don't really spend enough time reconciling that weekly, monthly Visa statement or our own accounting. And so there can be small little charges that show up on our things that could be that your account's compromised, and there's a $2 charge to some company you don't know who that is. That could be someone who has your card number and is trying to determine how much credit or if their fraud's going to go through by putting additional charges on your cards. So we really need to be wary of that. And for those who are helping older adults do their banking and assisting them in controlling their spending and finances, we really have to look at the same way the bank does what is normal. A normal spending habit might be, you know, $50 a week in groceries, your utilities, and various other things. And when we don't look for 3 or 4 months, sometimes all of a sudden there's different charges, or all of a sudden there's a spike in cash withdrawals. And it could be that someone, a personal support worker, a new friend in the family, a visitor has had access to mom and dad's debit or credit card, or there's some checks missing, and they've suddenly been cashed through the account. So that's something that I strongly encourage people is definitely on a monthly basis, if not every 2 weeks, sort of have a little quick review, 5-minute review of your financial statements to make sure that everything looks normal, and that there's nothing out of the ordinary you'd want to question or go to the bank and check hey, mom, dad, did you guys really take 500 cash out last Monday? You know, those are kind of those questions that you have to ask. When we look at the last thing here, just interacting with police, we have my partner, Matt Rocca, who can't be here this evening. He's away at a training course. He takes care of the regional level, the older adult support coordinator. And we refer people to Coast and LHIN, the local health integrated network. We have a whole bunch of different social workers, people at the hospital, and different care provider agencies. We can assist with well-being checkups and follow-ups at home. And a lot of the things that we end up doing is, as I say to the new recruits, we're kind of looking for a line in the sand, or the first time we meet an older adult or an older adult family at home, what are their behaviors like? What does their home look like? What sort of level of care do they have? Some of it is to how we can offer them more supports in the community. And then sometimes when we don't go somewhere all the time, we will notice changes. We might go every 6 months to a certain family or certain home, and then realize the third time, oh, the lawn is unkept. There's mail piling up. The car's parked sideways in the driveway. Things are out of sorts here. And then so those reports come back to me or Matt, and then we look at looking for their family members and see what may or may not be going on with them at home. And again, they may need additional services and supports if they're living at home with dementia or Alzheimer's and it's progressing. They might need a follow-up visit with a family doctor. So we look at those kinds of things. And then the other thing, obviously, police can help you with is things like fraud, neglect, assault, theft by power of attorney. All those calls go to the general line, to communications. They will send a uniformed officer to assist you either by phone or in person, take a report. If you're doing something with fraud or those kinds of things that would come to me, you would definitely work on collecting bank documents, statements, voided checks, things like that that might be important. And then I will end up reviewing the report and I would open a case and get back to you. And then hopefully we won't meet in that way, but if we do, there'll be some clear instructions that I'll give you of things you'll need to look for. And then we go from there. I think that might actually be my last slide because I can't remember. Oh yes, we sort of covered this, obviously. I'll review this real quick. We'll go back one more, there you go. If, yes, about gathering information for family members, those kinds of things. And I don't want to, I think the next part is where victim services, where Michelle's going to come in. The other thing too I wanted to touch on is traffic related issues. It's very difficult as a care provider to have to take mom and dad's license away if they're unsafe. Driving is one of those things that they've done forever. They feel a sense of freedom when they can get to the grocery store when they want to. They don't want to have to take the bus. Those are tough calls to make. We can definitely step in and assist with those things to go through the ministry and have their license put under review. It's not something we take lightly, but often it's better that we intercede when they're just sort of bumping the curb and a little scratch on the car, and they may be 85 or 90 years old still wanting to drive, and maybe they shouldn't be. So we can definitely visit those traffic related issues before they become very unsafe or cause harm to them or themselves or someone else. And then basically the other thing is when we look at those type traffic things or being safe in the community or wandering people or any one of the things that people could use police resources for, I hope that anybody would reach out and ask us for help. Some people don't call us, as we know. To recap, a lot of those older adults living in our community with dementia or the neighbor with dementia, they don't call us for assistance when we really could try and help and provide a better quality of life, get them the resources they need to live independently in their home for a little longer. And hopefully, if you have any questions, I'll be here through Michelle's. And then if not, you have Sandy's information, and she can also pass you along my information, and we can go and get you any support you might need while you're in the community.
That's great, Derek. Thank you. You've done such a thorough job that there are no questions at this time.
Wow, that's pretty good. It's pretty good.
Okay, thank you. And I think we'll turn it over to Michelle now. And that's great. Derek, if you want to turn your camera and mic off, and Michelle, if you want to pop up, we'll turn it over to you guys, to Michelle.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Sandy. Thanks, Derek. That was a great start there. So just to introduce myself, like Sandy said, my name is Michelle. I'm the Victim Support Coordinator for Halton Police. Derek and his team do most of the work with older adults, but I look after two programs with Halton Police that I'm just going to tell you a little bit about, two programs that might be very beneficial for you or your loved ones. I would also like to just tell you that about 8 or 9 years ago, I was sitting where you are. My dad had dementia, so I'm somewhat familiar with the journey that you're on, and I know how difficult it can be and how scary. And so I really take a lot of pride in the programs that Halton Police offers, and I'm happy to answer any questions tonight or moving forward with regards to the two programs that I'm going to tell you about. If we could just jump to the next slide, please. Perfect, thank you. So I'm just going to start off by saying that, most of you or all of you are in the room tonight because you have a loved one that may have Alzheimer's or dementia that you're caring for. And I just wanted to start off by saying that if that loved one were to go missing, you care for them all the time, but you head into the washroom or something, when you come out, they've left, or you get separated at a mall or anything at all. If your loved one goes missing and they have any cognitive impairment at all, it's important that you call the police right away. You can call the non-emergency line if you wish, but you can certainly call 911 for those instances. The police take very seriously anyone that's vulnerable and out in our community that has gone missing, especially this time of year as the weather starts to get colder and unpredictable. So please remember that if your loved one goes missing, don't hesitate to phone the police. When you do that, I'm just going to jump to the next slide, please. When you do that, please know that the police are going to ask you a whole lot of questions, and you may find it very difficult or very frustrating, thinking that you just want them to go find your loved one. I just want you to know that while they're asking you questions, someone is already out there looking for your loved one, and it's important that they get these answers as much as possible. So they might be asking you about a physical description, the clothing they were wearing. They'll ask you for sure about their cognitive ability or their mental well-being. They're going to ask you where you last saw them, what time and where. Have they been missing before? And if they were missing before, where were they found? What types of places might they go to? And again, it's going to be a lot of questions, maybe overwhelming, but keep in mind that someone is already out there looking for your loved one, and this information is going to help them find your loved one faster. Okay. If you go to the next slide, somebody will come to your home. So someone on the line is going to be asking you those questions. Police are also going to be coming to your home. When they get to your home, they're going to continue to probably ask you more questions. And if you think of things that have, you told them that your loved one was wearing a red sweater and then you realize it was a blue sweater, it's important to update them with any new information that you might have. The police are going to likely ask you to ask if they can search your home or the last known location of your loved one. Sometimes, and especially with the younger kids that have vulnerabilities, they may be actually hiding. It's also possible that your loved one might get into your shed or in your garage or something. And so police will ask to search your home just to be sure that your loved one isn't on the premises. They're probably going to ask you for a photo of your loved one, and that way they can distribute that. They're going to take a picture of it so that they can distribute it to any officers that are out on scene looking for your loved one. And someone will likely stay with you until they found your loved one and brought them home safe and sound. Okay. So that was kind of the important piece I wanted to start off with. And I'm going to tell you about our two programs. If you can go to the next slide. So the first program that I'm going to tell you about is our Vulnerable Person Registry. This program, again, all of you in the room have a loved one that has a cognitive disorder. And so I absolutely 100% recommend that when you go home tonight, or I guess you're already home, when you're at home tonight or tomorrow, that you register your loved one with our Vulnerable Person Registry. So the Vulnerable Person Registry is a voluntary service. There's no cost at all to it. It's an online process through the Halton Police website. It's going to take you about 15 minutes, maybe 20, to upload the information. And basically what it's going to do is it's going to provide the police with all that major information that they might need if your loved one either goes missing or has any contact with the police at all. And so just remember, I talked about all those questions that the police are going to ask you if your loved one goes missing. If you fill out the vulnerable person registry, many of those questions will already be answered. So in that case, the police, when you call them and say that your husband, John Doe, has gone missing, if John is registered on the vulnerable person registry, the police will automatically have much of John's information. They'll have his physical description, they'll have his cognitive abilities, they'll know if he wears hearing aids or if he's able to communicate, they'll know if he uses a walker and things like that. They'll also have a picture of him. There's, a huge benefit for the vulnerable person registry, and there's really no downside to it. The information is only for the police. Nobody else will ever have access to that information. And the police will only access that information if they've been directly requested to support your loved one. The information will be tied to your loved one by name and also by your home address or by your loved one's home address. So if someone calls 911 from the home address of the vulnerable person, that information will automatically appear for the police. Or if somebody calls anywhere out in the community and says that they have John Doe with them, the police will automatically be notified that John Doe is on the vulnerable person registry, and that information will be made available to them. So just so you know, the vulnerable person registry is set to expire every year. The reason for that is because your vulnerable loved one can change so much in that year. Their abilities may change, their physical looks may change, their location, where they're living may change. And so we do ask that you renew it every year. You will receive an email from me after 11 months to just let you know that we'd like you to renew the information. If you don't renew it, the information that we have will stay on file. It just may not be as up to date as we would like it to be. I'm just going to take a moment and show you. I'm going to share the screen and just give you a quick demonstration of how to access the registry. But as I said before, this is a very, very important part of my job to me. And so I am always happy to answer questions or walk anybody through this information. Vinitha and Sandy both have my contact information, and it can be shared to you at any point in time. But I will just share my screen. So to access the registry, you're going to go to the Halton Police website. And if Sandy, if you can just confirm that you can see it okay?
Yep, you're on.
Excellent, perfect. So when you go to the Halton Police website, this is what it looks like. If you go to services, you'll see a list of all of the different services that Halton Police offers, and they're alphabetical. So at the very end, you'll see the vulnerable person registry. You're going to click on that. And when you do, you're going to come to a new page that's going to give you a little bit of information about the vulnerable person registry, okay, which is much of what I've just told you now, but certainly gives you a chance to read through it. If you scroll down the page, under additional resources, you'll see there's a button to click to access the vulnerable person registry, okay? What that's going to do is it's going to bring up an extra form for you to complete. But before I show you that, if you just look at the bottom here, you'll see there's some frequently asked questions. If you wanted to learn a little bit more about the program, you can certainly do that there. So to register your loved one, you'll click on the Access the Vulnerable Person Registry, and that's going to bring up a new window. And so I'm just going to share the new window with you. Okay, so this is what the new one is going to look like. And there's a list of all of our different online reportings. Again, they're alphabetical. So if you scroll to the bottom, you'll find the vulnerable person registry. If you click on the little dot beside it and hit start report, now you're going to be right in there to complete the vulnerable person registry, okay? Again, you can read through. The first two things that it's going to ask you basically are, is the person a resident of Halton? Because the vulnerable person registry is specific to Halton Police. So if your loved one lives outside of Halton, they wouldn't be able to be part of our registry, but you can check with the police service in your region, in their region, sorry, to see if they have a registry. So you're going to confirm that the person lives in Halton. And then the next, this is legal sort of information, but basically the intent of it is to say that I'm registering a loved one that is vulnerable, And everything that I'm telling you is true and accurate to the best of my ability. But it also sort of releases Halton Police from responsibility in terms of, because you're giving us this information doesn't mean that we're going to be able to find your loved one or that things are going to turn out perfectly, but it will certainly help us to get there. So once you've agreed to both of those questions, you can continue with the registry. I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but what I will tell you is that there's 3 different sections to the registry. The first part, or the first section, is going to be information about you. Okay, so the person completing the registry is going to fill out this first section. The second page, and I can't go to it without completing, but the second page is going to be all about your loved one. Okay, so you're going to include everything that you can about your loved one that has the dementia, Alzheimer's. And then the third one is going to be for a photo that you can upload. Okay, this does time out. So after about 20 minutes, it does time out. So you should have your information ready before you log in. But again, it's basic physical description and things about the dementia or Alzheimer's as well. So I'm just going to stop sharing now. And if Tala, if you could throw my presentation back, that would be great.
Michelle, I do have a question.
Oh, perfect. Okay.
My loved one lives between my sister's and my own house, and we live in different regions. Who should we register with?
So you could register with both. So just know that if it's your sister that lives out of region, just know that if you are calling 911 from, if your sister's calling 911 from her location, it's going to go to the police in her region. So, they need to register whatever region, and not all regions have it, just to be clear. She would need to call the region that she's in to see whether they have it. And then when your loved one is at your place, and when you call 911, it's Halton Police that will be answering. So I would register the person on both for sure.
Okay, she said, thank you.
No problem. Was there other questions, Sandy, or just that one for now?
Sorry, there's one for Derek I'll do after you're finished.
Okay, perfect. So that's basically it for the vulnerable person registry. Again, I would say that there's no downside to this. There's no risk, there's no harm, there's no reason not to put your loved one on the vulnerable person registry. We have about 1,650 people right now on the registry. Again, I can't think of a downside. My dad was on it, and I absolutely think that this is something that you should make a priority for your loved one. Next slide, please. Excuse me. So the second program that I want to tell you about is sort of the next level of support that Halton Police can provide. So we have what's called the Project Lifesaver program, and I'm not sure how many of you would remember Helen Robertson, but back in 2017, Helen Robertson was a Burlington resident who suffered from cognitive impairment, and Helen loved to walk, and she walked regularly and for quite significant distances. And one day Helen was unable to find her way home. And the police launched an absolutely massive search to find Helen. And unfortunately, we're never able to find her. And Helen is still missing to this day. And because of that and some other public sort of movements within the region, Halton Police decided to bring on the Project Lifesaver program. So Project Lifesaver is a program out of the United States. It's really the only one of its kind. It is a radio frequency transmitter bracelet that your loved one would wear. So every second it emits a radio frequency signal. It's unbeknownst to you, you can't hear it or see it, but it's emitting a signal. And your loved one would wear it. And then if they were to go missing, you would phone 911 and the police would begin to search, but they would be using their Project Lifesaver equipment. So they're tracking devices to find your loved one. The program does have a 100% success rate throughout North America. They've never not found somebody that's been wearing a Project Lifesaver bracelet. There is a caveat to that. I just want to be clear. They don't always find the loved one safe and sound, but they are always able to bring the loved one home. They typically are able to find the loved one within 30 to 45 minutes. Okay. The bracelet does cost $460. And then there is a $60 annual fee to maintain the bracelet. There is funding available through the region of Halton if your family would like the bracelet for your loved one, but they're unable to afford it. There is some funding available. We also do have bracelets that are recycled that if a family needs it, can't afford it, but can't access the funding, we would try to be able to provide one anyway. The bracelet stays on your loved one 24/7. It never comes off. Okay, so they shower with it. They wear it everywhere they go. A volunteer would be responsible every 2 months to come to your home and check the bracelet, ensure that it's working properly. They would change the battery in the strap and clean the equipment for you and then put it back right on your loved one. So you don't need to worry about charging a battery or having, your loved one carry something with them. This bracelet will be with them. The important thing about the Project Lifesaver to know is that your loved one needs to have regular care in order for this to be effective. Because it's radio frequency versus a GPS type program, the radio frequency has a shorter range. So it's about a 2-mile radius. So just to be clear, that doesn't mean that if they're outside of 2 miles, we wouldn't be able to find them. We would still be triangulating in to find your loved one. We have 4 different devices. But if they've been gone for a really long time, then our chances of finding them actually goes down. And so someone that doesn't have regular care, let's say they live on their own, but they have a PSW that comes in every night at dinner, they wouldn't be a great candidate for our program because the PSW would leave, let's say at 6 o'clock after dinner and wouldn't be back until 5 o'clock the next night. And we won't know when your loved one left. And if they've been gone for a half an hour, we'd be able to find them quickly. But if they've been gone for 15 hours, then there's a very good chance they would be outside of our range. The program also wouldn't be appropriate for somebody who's still driving, who would go out in their vehicle and potentially get lost, because again, they could be too far away for our program to be able to find them. Project Lifesaver is something that I tend to have very significant, lengthy conversations with loved ones about our Project Lifesaver program and then also other GPS options so that we can talk about what the best fit is for your loved one. So if your loved one is a wanderer or has gone missing in the past, reach out to me and we can talk about the different options that are out there and what might work for you. I think maybe Vinitha will touch on this, but often when I'm having conversations with a loved one about the Vulnerable Person Registry or Project Lifesaver, we're talking about things like the purple ID card so that your loved one has identification on them, and also the medical alert bracelet that you can get so that your loved one is wearing a bracelet that would have their ID and explain that they have a cognitive impairment. And those are things that I would also talk about or recommend when we're having a conversation, just so that I know that your loved one is sort of in the best shape when they're out in the community or if they were to wander away from you. We currently have about 35 clients on our Project Lifesaver program. We've had about 85 over the course of the last 3 years. And people come and go on the program for different reasons. Some people refuse to wear it, some move out of the region, some move into long-term care homes, things like that. And that's why we have people that come and go, but we have about 35 clients right now. The program is for both, really for anybody that's vulnerable. So we have about a 50-50 split of kids that suffer from Alzheimer's or autism or dementia versus older adults that suffer from Alzheimer's. I think I messed that up again. So we have a pretty even split between kids that have autism and Down syndrome versus older adults that have dementia and Alzheimer's. If I could go to the next slide, I think that might be it for me. Yeah, so there's my contact information, and I believe you'll get a copy of the slides. But again, Vinitha and Sandy know how to reach me as well and can do so at any time. I'm happy to take questions if anyone has any, but that's about it for me.
That's great, Michelle. That's very helpful. And there is Derek Gray's information also, if people had any question. And as both Michelle and Derek said, we will be sending these slides out to you at the end of the presentation. The one question I do have, Derek, is for you.
Okay.
If someone who needs help refuses help, can they be taken from their home to the hospital if emergency services are called?
Well, that's a big question. The short answer, without getting into specifics, would be yes. However, if we look at, it's hard to know what the caller is asking about for an older adult. Many people who are older adults with dementia, diabetes, various cognitive issues, We do see some older adults that have, earlier in life, they had alcoholism or drug dependency, and later in life, they have cognitive impairment. We get called to all kinds of calls like that to keep the peace, to help the public, to help EMS, and do the well-being checks. If the officers who attended determine the person's own safety well-being, there is a section under the Mental Health Act that says if an officer reasonably believes the person can't care for themselves, they're a threat to themselves or threat to the public. And we also do social admits sometimes to the hospital when we find an older adult who is living in isolation and they don't seem to be doing very well and they won't care for themselves and they won't go with EMS. Typically, EMS personnel are very awesome and they are very well equipped to negotiate with older adults and people with cognitive issues, getting them to get to the hospital for a checkup. And it may be that simple that sometimes we show up and we just assist in that. So the short answer would be technically yes, most of the time, but it all depends on what's going on with that person.
Yeah, thank you. You're right. It is a very complicated answer. So thank you very much, Derek and Michelle, and thank you for offering up your contact info again, which we will also send out. And I think at this point, we'll take a 5-minute break. We'll come back just after 8:05. And Vinitha will be talking about in particular home safety. And she has some great information on devices that will be very helpful in your home. So I'll see everybody in about 5 minutes. Thank you. Okay, hello to everybody again. It's Sandy, and I wanted to mention that the music you've been listening to was put together for us by our music therapist, and we have talked previously in this series about the importance of music for people with dementia also. And I also find music very therapeutic, and so do keep that in mind when you're visiting your relative or working with your relative. And now I'm going to turn it over to Vinitha Nair, our caregiver educator, who's going to talk about safety in the community and home. Vinitha, you just need the different view, please.
I do. We good?
Perfect. It's all yours.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm going to continue the conversation on safety in the community and home. What Derek and Michelle have told you are from a policing perspective. I'm going to address this from a caregiver's perspective, in the sense that what would you do to prepare yourself and be proactive when you have a family member with dementia living at home. So we'll look at how do we create a safe and meaningful environment? What are some of the safety risks and strategies that we can use to avoid those issues? And then I'll end with some gadgets and devices. I'll demonstrate and show you some cool things that you can use at home just as a stopgap safety measure. All right. Feel free to ask me questions as we go along, Sandy. So if anything comes up, let me know, and I'm happy to answer those questions.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks. So as we all know, when our family members have been diagnosed with dementia, there is a compromised sense of perception. Their judgment is compromised. Their perception can change. There's changes in their balance. So just knowing that there are changes in their ability to process their environment and in their capabilities just prompts us to be proactive, right? So we need some safety measures that can prevent harm to them and reduce stress for ourselves as caregivers. So a couple of things to do would to adapt the home to support those changes in their abilities. At the same time, we want to pay attention to their sense of control, giving them some independence over their, their daily lives and their environment, and also to enable them to stay at home longer. Because we've often heard caregivers say, "Oh, we had an accident," or "There was an incident, and mom's in the hospital," or "My, family members in the hospital." So the whole point of this, the focus of this presentation, is to make sure that we're proactive and we avoid those incidents. I keep reaching out for the mouse and forget I have the clicker in my hand. So what would be a safe approach? Like I said, the goal here is to encourage your family member to be independent. And when I say stress or emphasize the sense of independence, you want to reduce their anxiety. What I mean by that is we don't want to do everything for them. So I've had caregivers say, "Oh, let me do this for you, and let me take care of things for you." And the person that you're taking care of actually gets irritated with that. So give them, a sense of control, that I can do these things by myself and not mess up. That's what I mean by keeping the sense of independence high and reducing their anxiety. It can be a trigger for some behaviors for some of our family members. So what is our role as a caregiver? We want to identify some of those safety risks, anticipate, and be prepared. So planning in advance is a good idea, because we don't want to be, in a situation where we have had an incident and then we react to that. As I go along, I will introduce some anecdotes from caregivers based on their personal experiences, and just give you an idea. It'll give you an idea of some situations that can sneak up on us, and kind of unexpectedly. We're caught unawares. We're just unprepared for it. So basically, the focus is keep a safe environment to avoid injuries and address some safety hazards. One thing I wanted to tell you before I started off, there are 3 slides that you don't have in your copy of the presentation, only because the links that I introduced in the PowerPoint, and I'll tell you when we get there, I decided to make a copy and put them into slides, because I wasn't comfortable with switching screens, opening links and coming back to my screen to share with you during the presentation. And those are 2 slides. And the 3rd slide is about a special offer that Philips has introduced. I just got the email at 4 o'clock, so I thought it would be appropriate to let you all know about it's a safety device, that a safety program that they have from Philips Lifeline. So yeah. So what are some of the situations or issues that we can tackle? Like Derek mentioned, finances are a big one. As most of us know, our family members are on a lot of medication. So how do we handle that? Some of us are still driving after a diagnosis. And then staying at home means, keeping the home safe, different areas of the home. And then how do we handle certain emergency situations? So I'll start off with finances. I've often heard caregivers say that their family member cannot manage banking anymore. Now, they may need some assistance, and depending on their cognitive, the level of impairment, depending on the cognitive decline, you might actually have to assist them with the banking on a regular basis, or just manage it for them, take over. So there have been situations where a sibling will say to me, "I think my sister or my brother is taking advantage of my dad." I actually had a family situation where the daughter had to go into the bank, talk to all of the financial managers who were taking care of dad's finances, because the brother would accompany dad, who was diagnosed with dementia, into the bank, have him sign checks, and try to withdraw large amounts of money. But since the daughter had flagged this in advance, they knew not to. So That's what I mean when I say manage or assist with banking, make those arrangements in advance. So this was a conversation the father had prior to his diagnosis. And he had set up a system where both the daughter and the son had to have signatures for any financial transaction. So he was, kind of preparing for a situation in future, and that's what they did. Limit transactions on a debit card or a credit card. So I also had another caregiver tell me, Mom has about $10,000 on her credit card. She might have expenses that come up on a regular basis, and I kind of, cautioned them. So that's just me being proactive and being safe instead of, waiting for something to happen. So you make the best decision for yourselves, but I'm just putting it out there since we're talking about safety. Limit the amount of, the money that can be spent on a credit card or a debit card. So what we're doing there is minimizing the risks, minimizing the situation, a situation where they can be taken advantage of, but at the same time giving them some, control and giving them the ability to still use their cards. Limit the dollars in their wallet or use fake bills. So I'll give you another example. I actually went to a workshop, and when we broke out into little groups to do hands-on activities, one of the gentlemen in the room said, I have a story to share. I carry pennies in my pocket. And this was when we had stopped using pennies in Canada. He said, oh, this is such a difficult situation. Every time we go somewhere to the store, I dread getting to the cashier because my wife will not leave that line until she gets the last penny in change. And of course, the cashier is trying to explain, we don't make any pennies anymore. And he goes, I had to go through a couple of difficult situations where I wasn't prepared for it. So, and she wouldn't leave the line. It took 15 minutes and people behind us in the line to, figure out what's going on. And he couldn't explain because this was a situation he just wasn't anticipating. So from then on, he began to carry change and pennies in his pocket. And before his wife could react and say anything, he would take it out and say, "Oh, the cashier's already given me the correct change." So he said, I kind of minimized that situation and eliminated the need for that argument or creating a situation where she was asking for, the change. Also, giving them something in their wallet. They're very used to, we're all used to going out and living our lives for all these years, right? On our own. We've not depended on other people for our daily expenses. So even after a diagnosis, I suggest that you still let our family members, we want them to have that sense of control. So carry a handbag or a wallet and put the money in there so that if they want to purchase, they're not going to make any major purchases, right? But something small like a drink or a snack or a coffee, you're with them. And you can always say, even if it's in a restaurant, I've had a caregiver say, we go to a restaurant and she wants to pay, but she doesn't know the PIN, she doesn't know what's going on. Sometimes she'll offer a tip 2 or 3 times, and then I get embarrassed trying to manage the situation for her. So I suggest let them use the credit card. We've minimized the amount that they can spend on it, but you excuse yourself and then say, oh, I think they need my help, or let me check if I think there is a problem with the credit card, or talk to the person, the waiter in advance before the bill is due to be paid. So kind of using, a balance in between, giving them some amount of money to spend as well as managing it for them. There's also been situations where caregivers have told me their family members can't tell how much is in the wallet or handbag, and they can't do the math. So in situations like that, and again, go with your family members' ability to tell the difference. I'm just talking about a common, situation which could happen. If they are able to still do the math and manipulate, I mean, manage the finances, sure, let them. But if you think there may be a situation, then put in, I've had caregivers do that, Canadian Tire money. I've had some caregivers say they've used Monopoly money. So again, go with the stage of dementia, and it's only not to create an anxiety or a panic situation. Always keep in mind your family members' sense of dignity and respond to that situation. Remove or replace expensive items. Again, something that I've dealt with a couple of families where rings have been wrapped up in tissue, tossed in the garbage. There was one family where mom actually took her ring and threw it into the swimming pool. This was a woman who would walk in and out of the house bringing different pieces of jewelry to show me, and she would say, she had a good memory about where she had got those precious pieces of jewelry, but they were lying all over the house. And I had to tell the spouse, you can't let her just access these things. You've got to minimize the the risk here. So that's what I meant by removing and replacing expensive items. Put away things that might be of value. Moving into finances now. Again, Derek mentioned a little bit about power of attorney. So as most of us know, it is a legal document that you need to be able to represent a family member who's been diagnosed with cognitive impairment. Now, a cautionary note about the power of attorney. When you write it up, it's effective immediately. So if you don't want somebody to be your power of attorney, you want to specify a date for when it becomes effective. Or say that when I am incapable of making decisions on my own, I appoint this person as a power of attorney, and it becomes effective only at that point. Have a conversation with your family members about when that should be used. So there's different ways you can draft the power of attorney, jointly or severally. What that means, and I'm not very good with this legalese, but what it means in common language is that either one person or all the siblings together are responsible for making decisions. And I've heard from different family members that it's easier when you do it as one or two rather than all of them, because it's very hard. You always have a group of 2 or 3 siblings, and you always have one person that does not agree with the rest of them. So we have a power of attorney for personal care, which means it's giving you the authority to make decisions related to health and a person's care, and a separate one for property, which is for finances and property. What a power of attorney means is that you're giving a person permission to act on your behalf when you're incapable of making those decisions yourself. It does not mean that I'm transferring ownership. There's some confusion with family members on what that means. So just clarifying. I have here on the slide a power of attorney for each of those, personal care and property. I just wanted you to know I have booklets from CLEO, the Community Legal Education Ontario. I have booklets for both, for property and for personal care, that you are welcome to pick up from the office in Oakville. So do let me know if you're going that way, and I'm happy to put some copies out. They're available at no cost. So every time we do an info series, I just make sure to order about 50 or 100. So feel free to come by and pick them up. Now, what if you don't have a power of attorney? Most often I get phone calls saying, well, we didn't know this was going to happen, so we don't have a power of attorney. Mom or dad or my husband or wife does not have one written up. So what do we do? Automatically, according to the legal system here, you become a substitute decision maker if there is no legal document. There is a legal hierarchy, not just anyone can become an SDM. There is a legal hierarchy of substitute decision makers in Ontario, and that order is a spouse, then a parent, a child or a sibling, and then any other relative. The last resort, if nobody's around, because I have had situations where there's no family, there's no one for this person, then the last resort is to appoint somebody through the Office of the Public Guardian and Trustee. So again, I strongly advise to prepare these legal documents in advance. Moving into medications. Some of our family members are on multiple medications for other, conditions that we have. A cautionary note there for caregivers, and I can tell you a personal experience with my own mom, is to make sure that you are aware of how many medications they're taking. Are those medications necessary? The dosage, to monitor those prescriptions, because some medications like antidepressants, diuretics, they don't need to be on them permanently. You can taper off the medications. And again, check with your pharmacist and your doctor before you do that. And the reason I'm saying that is because after a certain age, multiple medications can be toxic to our system. Our bodies don't process the medication as well as they used to when we were young. So it can be toxic or it can induce delirium. Both of those are medical emergencies. So in my mom's case, she was 79 and the doctor had her on 17 different medications. So it turned out that she had no idea. I mean, every phone call every conversation I had with her, I would ask her, so you're taking your medications? I had no idea how many she was taking. And then one fine day we had an emergency situation. Mom had developed tremors in her chin. She had this blank look on her face. She wasn't interacting with people. She got paranoid. And it was like a sudden, switch. And I'm thinking, oh my God, this is delirium. But I'm not, of course, medically qualified to diagnose anything. So we bring her to the hospital and more medications are added to the list. It doesn't help the situation. About 10 days into this, we're lucky nothing happened to her. That was a near miss for us. We took her out of the hospital, brought her home, and had her check in with a diabetologist, because that's the only medical condition she really had at that time, and still to this day. And the diabetologist said, this is a 79-year-old woman. How can you expect her body to tolerate 17 different medicines? Take everything off the list, and I'm putting her only on insulin and a vitamin. No, it was a blood thinner. Within 3 days, Mom was back to her old self. You could tell from her voice, you could tell the tremors had gone. She was back to doing what she did on a regular basis. So that was our personal experience with polypharmacy, or the multiple medications for an elderly person. Limit and restrict access to medication. Very often I have had caregivers say, Mom has dementia, she lives by herself, but she's pretty good with her medication. No, I don't think so. I disagree with that. I've actually had a daughter say, sometimes I go into the home where Mom lives and I find the medication on the floor, or I don't know if Mom's had them or if the dogs had them. So, there comes a point where you want to manage that medication. You want to limit and restrict access to medication, just because we tend to forget. If I am cognitively impaired, I can't remember if I've taken my medication, right? So I don't know. Have I taken it? Did I forget? Do I need to take it again? And some of the medication that we have prescribed, you can't afford to make mistakes, right? You can't afford to have a second dose, neither can you skip a dose. So that's what I mean when I say manage the medication for them, prevent medication errors, limit and restrict access in the sense that they don't have the free reign to open a cupboard and say, oh, there's a medication. Maybe I haven't had my medicine today, so let me take another one. I've also had a story from a caregiver whose mom would call Shoppers Drug Mart every day because she thought she needed some medication that was not delivered. She would call them every day and say, I don't have the medication delivered yet. Could you bring it home? And finally, the daughters had to have a conversation with the pharmacist and say, you know what, please just pick up the phone and when she calls, just let her know you've already delivered the medication. So dispose of unused and expired medication, things that we do on a regular basis, just being a little more cautious when you have somebody with a cognitive decline living at home. And I've talked about monitor prescription. So just check in with your pharmacist and your doctor whether mom needs or dad, your family member, needs to continue the medication that has been prescribed in advance, right? So I always suggest if caregivers have a friendly neighborhood pharmacist, become their friend, because it's easier to talk to a pharmacist than to consult with your doctor and get them on the phone and say, hey, I just want to check in with you about this medication. There's some drugs that interact with each other. So the pharmacist, again, is the best person to consult. So that's a good resource to have. Do not stop the medication abruptly when you think that it's got an adverse effect on your family member. You definitely need to talk to a professional. Avoid medication mishaps and adverse effects. So I had a caregiver who would decide that a particular medication was too strong for her family members. So she would decide, I'm not going to give it to him. Or this week, I'll just give it to him twice a week. You know, so please don't try to manage that and play doctor, because it's not a smart idea. Also, when you notice that some of the medication does not have the desired effect. Now, when I say that, I want to be careful, because usually when you have a medication that's prescribed, it takes about 4 to 6 weeks to tell how they affect your family member. But if it doesn't have the desired effect, consult your pharmacist and your doctor and let them know that this is what I'm noticing. Should we try a different medication and see if it does something different? So I was just talking to a caregiver today, and she said her husband was on a very commonly prescribed medication for people with cognitive impairment. And he has complications due to heart surgery. And she said every time he took that particular medication, I could tell that it was going to complicate things, because they had 3 different incidents in a month with calling an ambulance, calling 911 for an emergency, medical emergency. And being a nurse, she decided to take that off. She talked to the doctor, stop that medication. And sure enough, she said, we've had no incidents so far. So just something to consider if you notice that your family member is not responding well to the medication that's been prescribed. Take it as directed, so don't change dosages. Don't try to tweak things on your own. Keep an updated list of current medications and dosage, because situations change, medical conditions change. And when you monitor them continuously, you might not want to continue with the same dosage or the same number of medications. Some of them may not be necessary. Use a pillbox organizer or a blister pack. Again, a pillbox organizer for, again, you're managing the medication, helping somebody manage this with putting the medication into different boxes. But if they cannot manage this, if things are going from one to another, then it's time for you to take care of that for your family member. So medication safety is your responsibility at that point. If you notice those little, mishaps are happening. Medication tantrums, what do I mean by that? Some of our family members have trouble taking medication, right? So we've seen a whole variety of those behaviors in the day program. We've had clients in the program pretend to swallow their medication. It's somewhere here, or they slip it under the placemat. They actually do this like they're taking the medication, but it's under the placemat. We've had people put them in their pockets. We've had people spit it out. We've had people take their medication apart if it's a capsule, and we've had orange powder spill on the, right? So there are different possibilities here. And when I say tantrum, It's refusing to take it. So I'm not going to take the medication. I don't want it. I don't like it. So this could go anywhere. So you have a whole range of behaviors when it comes to medication. Some strategies to try out are, don't try to force the person to take the medication, because again, it's a trigger for behaviors and other safety concerns. Come back in 5 minutes. Just walk away from the person, come back and try it later on. Use a pill crusher or a pill cutter. I know they're available in Shoppers and Walmart and the dollar store sometimes, to, crush or break really big medication. I know some of the medication, they look really huge. They're like horse pills. So if your family member has trouble swallowing them, then use something like that. Again, check with the pharmacist, because some medication cannot be. They're slow release medication, so you can't actually crush them or split them. So talk to the pharmacist or your doctor. Sometimes it's a good idea to convert the pills into a liquid. So I've actually had caregivers who said, my family member has a hard time swallowing. So I'm going to ask the pharmacist if I can get the same medication in a liquid, in drops, and then you do the drops for the dosage that you require. We have also had a lot of success with mixing medication into a favorite food or snack. So chocolate pudding, ice cream, fruit yogurt, Oreo cookies, put it back. So whatever your family member loves, enjoys eating. So I guess it's the Mary Poppins principle of, spoonful of sugar makes the medicine go down. So try that. It's easier to deal with it than to make a big deal of the situation. Driving. So Derek again referred to the situation where some of our family members are continuing to drive. Driving is a very complex skill. We need to coordinate our eyes and our limbs. We need social interaction. We're looking at, should I move, switch lanes? Am I far enough? And to be able to combine that it's a really complex task for somebody who is cognitively impaired. So what are some of the signs that your family member should not be driving anymore? When you notice that they have near misses, when there are accidents, when they get lost. I recall a caregiver saying, my husband drives us to my daughter's house every weekend, but he doesn't know the way anymore. And I asked her, I said, so what do you do? Does he still drive? Oh, sure, he drives. So what do you do? She said, I have to tell him where to turn. And sometimes when I say left, he turns in the wrong direction. I've also had caregivers say that their family members completely switch their responses to the green and the red. So they move on the red and they stop on the green. Getting irritable when you're driving, or asking for instructions. So those are some warning signs that it's probably time to stop. What do we do? Like Derek mentioned again, it's a very sensitive topic for most of us because it interferes and takes away. It's a threat to our independence. So talk to your doctor, make someone else a bad guy. You don't want to be that person, because certain things, in spite of cognitive issues, certain things are emotional connections. They stay in our minds, and driving most often is a very strong emotional connection. I have to tell you the story of a caregiver who came into my spousal support group every 2 weeks, and she would leave with a big smile saying, oh, I've got to go home and drive him around. So his thing was, his license was taken away. Her husband's license was taken away. And he was so strongly attached because this was his last car. His hobby was tinkering with cars. And he always had this paranoia that somebody had stolen his car. So she took it upon herself to drive him around. Never mind if it was summer or winter, it didn't matter what the season was. She drove him around for at least 40 minutes to an hour, searching for that one car. Yeah, so driving is a really sensitive issue. Easy impact when you've got to take away the license. Again, it's a trigger for behaviors. Not easy to talk somebody into giving up their keys and stop driving. I've had caregivers disconnect the battery, remove things in the car and pretend that it doesn't work. I've had them say that it's in the workshop. So do whatever you have to keep your family members and yourselves safe. We're thinking of both the person who's driving as well as the passengers. Okay, so if it means you have to disable the vehicle, please do so. Home environment, which is where we spend most of our time, right? So a lot of us have pretty rugs, things around the house, photo albums, pictures laying around, and that's all right. But when we have a family member who's diagnosed with cognitive impairment, there is a stage when mobility around the house becomes a little confusing with too many things surrounding them. So my advice, again, and from a safety perspective, is to eliminate and declutter all the objects and the furniture. You can ask the LHIN, you can request the LHIN to come in and do a free home safety assessment if you have any concerns. So that's the assessment when they will take a walk through and let you know if you need to put in grab bars, move. I think I've had one caregiver say they thought that the glass table was a safety risk because of balance issues. And depending on what kind of dementia, what stage of dementia your family member is at, perception issues, the balance and the fall risks are those situations that become safety concerns. Again, remove valuable sentimental objects. Talking to a caregiver last week, and she said mom's going around cutting up all the photo albums in the house. So remove things like that. There was also a lady who would take a little sharp object and gouge things out in the wall. So remove things that are, hazards in the environment. Secure your doors, windows, backyard gates. This is not just for family members who are at, who are wanderers, but also for any one of you who's taking care of a family member at home. There is a high risk that they will exit. So any exit and entry points must be secured. And I'll show you some locks and alarms and chimes that you can use when I finish talking here. So I've got some things that can secure cabinets, that can send out a little beep or a sharp sound when the door is open. Check batteries for smoke alarms and carbon monoxide detectors. And security cameras. So my recent trip to India, mom lives alone. This is what I did. I have installed a security camera, 3 security cameras in mom's apartment. And they come now with remote access apps. So it's as simple as putting an app on your phone. So you can actually pick up the phone, hit the button and look at mom in her room, living room or dining room, wherever. I have a caregiver who does that when she comes to the support group. She leaves her husband by himself for 2 hours and he's somewhere in the early to mid stages, but she'll pull up the phone and she'll say, I can check if he's sitting in his comfy chair. If he's not, then I have to be worried, I'm going to leave. So some options to consider. I'm sure we've talked about this with community resources and fall prevention. Again, the safety assessment would be a good suggestion to check if your family member is at risk going up or down the stairs. I've had family members move their loved ones to the main floor so that they can avoid going up and down the stairs. Locking up chemicals, cleaning products, anything you use in the garden, anything you use in the kitchen, around the house, tools. Putting away appliances that get too hot, because that, again, the sensory abilities change over a period of time, or getting appliances that automatically switch off. Removing fake food. We've actually had experiences with caregivers where you couldn't put Christmas ornaments out that looked like food. You couldn't have game pieces that were small enough to fit in your mouth. They look like food, and the person who has the cognitive impairment is not able to differentiate. So remove things that appear like food. For those of us who have family members who are still moving around the house and fidgeting with things, turning on the stove, opening cupboards, and not able to manage that, install a kill switch as an option. You need an electrician. This is not a do-it-yourself project. You need an electrician to come in and install a kill switch somewhere in the kitchen that's not too visible. There's also covers that you can get for burners. They look like the little doorknobs that just fit over. I know that they're available online at Walmart and Canadian Tire. $10 for 2-pack. And I know Sandy mentioned something that was a stove alarm. I haven't seen one, but maybe Sandy can tell you what it is. In the washroom, I suggest adjusting your water temperature, because again, our family members can't tell the difference between temperatures that are scalding and just manageable. So you might hear, just to share an experience with a particular family that I was supporting, the 2 sisters, and they said, Mom takes 2-second showers now. And I said, well, what do you mean? So she said, I wait by the door. I hear her turning on the water, and then she's out the next second. So before I can say 1, 2, 3, Mom's out. She couldn't have possibly had a shower. So I asked, are you going in and turning on the water for her? Or do you think she's having trouble setting the water, controlling that temperature? And they said, oh, we never thought of it. So they tried it out for the next week. And then when we got back to the support group, sure enough, they had to make an excuse to go in because Mom would not let them in the shower. So make an excuse to get in and say, I just want to check. I was having trouble with this. The water was too cold when I had a shower. So let me just check if it's okay now. And set the temperature to the right, heat or cold, whatever they prefer, and then leave. I've also suggested, anti-skid mats are for preventing fall hazards, removing locks. So I've had a caregiver, and this is a true story, believe me, who actually came to my group and said, my wife can take up to 4 hours in the washroom. And I just about almost fell off the chair because I said, no. Well, what had happened was she had forgotten how to unlock the door. So she just sat in there and he waited for her to come out of the washroom. So before things like that happen, before we get to that stage, what I suggest is remove the lock or the latch. You can leave a knob on the door. Again, that sense of control. I'm shutting the door, there's a knob to shut it. But remove the ability to lock the door, because in case they don't know how to unlock, we're stuck. And then I've had a caregiver who's been the other extreme, who said he just took off the doors in his bathroom. So you don't have to go to one extreme or the other, but based on your family members, ability to do things, kind of estimate and be proactive when it's time to be safe about that. Okay. Make a plan for emergencies. So basically, pack a kit, because you never know when you'll have an emergency. What should you pack in that kit? Names and phone numbers, all the medications that your family member is on, important documents, power of attorneys, the do not resuscitates, because you will be asked when you're in the hospital, and if there is an emergency situation, a decision will have to be made. And if you don't have the documents, that will delay the situation, right? Pack up some water, snacks, change of clothes, your batteries and a charger. Keep a notebook and a pen in case you were given instructions and things too that you at that point when you're overwhelmed and you can't remember. It's a notebook and a pen. Maybe a book to read. So be prepared. Have that bag in a very convenient location that you can grab and go. Other emergency resources. We usually give out this vial when we have the info series in person. Again, if anyone wants to pick up, they're available in our Oakville office. Let me know. I'm happy to give them to you. What it does, well, I'll show it to you when we are looking at all the other stuff, and I'll tell you how it works. But I've got a copy of the form. So these are the 2 slides that you're missing. Please don't worry. It's a link that will open up on your PowerPoint. I just wanted to walk you through this. That emergency wallet card is a good idea because it's got all the information that you need if there is a medical emergency. Okay. So what is your name, your phone number, the medications that you're on, your medical history, any allergies, and anything else to consider. So put that in your wallet. That's the first link that I have there. And the second link was that emergency vial. And I'll show you in a bit when I'm talking about all the other things. It actually has a form in there, and that's the form you're looking at on the screen. It also comes with stickers like this, which you can stick on the front door and the refrigerator. So if the paramedics were to come to your home and they see that sticker, they know to pick up the vial, which is sitting in your refrigerator on the door. So we'll go over that one more time when I show you everything else that I have just on the table here. All right, so let's get into all the gadgets. Since you have this information on your screen, I'm just going to go switch out of the sharing screen so you can have a larger view and see the things that I'm going to show you here. So bear with me while I switch screens. Sandy, and can you please let me know, Sandy Rotella, can you please let me know when I've got this view looking right on your screens?
Okay, still see the PowerPoint. You need to stop sharing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, now we can see you.
Okay.
Yeah, great.
I'm going to call my trusty helper here. I've lined up my son to help me with this. So what I did was, can you see this? Just let me know if you can see this.
That's great. Yeah.
Yeah. We fashioned a little cardboard cabinet. It's make-believe wooden cabinets. Okay.
That's great.
All right. Here's what we did. And I'm going to start off by showing you the mag locks because that's what I have on the screen here. This is what it looks like. Okay. The magnet. This is the hardware, and this is the key. So how it works is that you have a wooden cabinet. So let's say this is your medicine cabinet or a cabinet in the kitchen, which you don't want your family member to access and you're trying to limit their access to it. So what it does is you put the hardware on the inner side of the cabinet. And I'm not sure, I'm going to be very quiet so you can hear the click. Can you hear that click?
Yep, got it.
What it's doing and how it works is that when this hardware is installed and you take away the key, you cannot open the door. When you try to unlock the door, it stays locked, right? So it stays closed. Now, if you want to open it, take something out, unless the key is connecting with the magnet on the inside of that door, you can't open it. So now when you hear the click, you can actually open it. That's how you open the door. So I'm going to move it here and that way I can show you how it actually works. There. So they're actually connecting, the two are connecting here to unlock the door. Okay. Now this is something I'm showing you, which has to be installed with screws, and it comes as a package with all the hardware that you need. You don't have to go with this company. It could be anything. You find them in Walmart and Canadian Tire, the Super Safety store, on a Safety Superstore, I believe, on Dundas in Trafalgar. So Home Depot, any store that sells hardware. This is one that you actually have to use screws to install, but they also come in a peel-off. with a strip on the back. So you just peel off the backing, and then the magnet, the piece that engages is on the inside with the key. Okay. The other thing I had to show you was a door and window chime. Bear with me, this is a little noisy, so don't be startled. How this works, it's called, again, not connected with the Swan Company. Go with anything that you find in any store. I'm just showing you what it looks like. Comes with 2 pieces. And these are, again, just peel off. This piece goes on your door frame. So we're going to assume, imagine that the door frame is here, and you want the arrows to line up. Can you see this?
Yep, got it.
Yeah. These arrows line up. And the on-off panel in this model is very neatly hidden in there. So no one can go in and switch it off or switch it on. But what it does when it's on the on mode, when the door opens, it actually beeps and, okay, I picked one that has no battery in it. It's not working. Try this one. There you go. So that's enough to alert us that somebody's opened the door, right? So it actually sits this way on the door. This one sits on the door that's moving. So when the door opens, it makes the sound. And this piece sticks on the frame of the door. The other one I had on that page is a door wedge alarm. Looks like this. I know that Swan does not make them anymore, but there are other companies that do. Again, it has an on-off switch here. So how this works is when you turn the switch on and the door opens. So we actually place it here. You place it under the door, and when the door opens, this one presses down. If it's in the on mode, you'll hear that loud alarm that alerts you that the door is open.
Very good demonstrations, Vinitha. I also, I recommend that door alarm, especially if people are traveling, if they're going somewhere, maybe for Christmas or before COVID, when we used to travel. It's good for motel rooms, hotel rooms,
Absolutely.
your houses.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Just to let you know, Vinitha, it is 9 o'clock.
Oh, okay. I'm going to rush through this. Bear with me, please. Doorknobs, very simple, that you can use to prevent them from opening the door. If there are people who will threaten to leave the car when it's moving, safety belt covers for the seat belt. Your belt goes in here, and this piece sits over the orange button, so you can't actually depress and unlock. The vial we talked about, so I won't talk about it again. If there's anyone at risk for falling, this is a handy bar that goes into a piece on the door, actually on the car by the door, and you can hold it for balance. Okay, and then I think you guys might have already seen this, the medical alert bracelet. It's got your name and some basic information on the back.
Yep, and can you show them the blue part again? The medical alert.
Yes.
When someone has dementia, the medical alert part will be blue like that.
Yes. Yes, this dial, that's what Sandy's talking about.
Yeah, so it's painted blue.
Yes, and I've actually had caregivers wear one too, saying I'm a caregiver of a person with dementia because it was just them. The kids were out of the country or out of town. If you have a person that you're taking care of with responsive behaviors, we have tons of these cards. Please feel free to let me know if you want any. You put them in your handbag or your wallet. And if there is a situation when you're out in public at a store or anywhere and you can't explain things, pull this out and hand it over to the person. So you're explaining the behaviors without embarrassing your family member. Sorry, I went over time, but any questions, Sandy, from anyone?
Yes, there are a couple. Someone asked about the medications. Is it common practice for a pharmacist to review on an annual basis a client's drug regimen? This is assuming, this is assuming the client uses the same pharmacist.
Yes, yes. I strongly recommend a review because, like I said, your situation changes, your medical conditions change, right? Some new conditions may develop, others might not be so chronic. You might have managed it and you may not need the same dosage that you used to. So it's a good idea to review annually.
Yeah, the question was, is it common practice? I think you have to ask for it.
Yes, I think you request it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm sorry. The other question is, are the online wills, power of attorney, and living wills that you can customize based on their templates recognized by the courts as legally binding? So those forms, the power of attorney ones, you can get.
I don't know that. I don't know anybody who's personally, I don't know anyone who's used online wills. I suggest you talk to an attorney and register it. It's a safer option.
Yeah, thank you.
I don't know anyone who's used something online.
And someone else has just indicated that she typed out a similar message to the cards that the companion cards.
Mm-hmm.
She put it on notes in her phone, and when she takes her mom to an appointment, she shows them the phone, they read the message, and then we're on our way.
Yeah. So I have a whole stack of them, boxes of them. So anyone who wants them, I'm happy to give you as many as you want. I usually bring them to the support groups and meetings and put them out on the table. But since we're doing this online, just let me know if you're coming by the Oakville office and I can set up some time too. I don't live far away from there, so I can swing by and drop some off at the front desk and you can pick it up.
Yeah. Someone else said, my mom's pharmacy called me today to do her annual medication review, not something I'd asked for. So that's great.
Oh, that's good. That's good. That's enough for them to offer it. I only know that you can ask for it. I haven't heard of pharmacies offering it. So that's good. That's good.
Yeah. And someone asked if there's a specific insurance for either the caregiver or the person with dementia to help out. Was that the question?
We had a question one of those weeks. Remember, as soon as I had come back from my trip, and we did the first session with Katie, was it?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So I actually ended up calling a major insurance provider to answer the question because Sandy and I didn't know the answer to it when someone had asked us. I called a major insurance provider, and off the list, that popped on my screen, I happened to pick a representative whose mom and mother-in-law are living with dementia at this time. So he understood what I was asking. Apparently, there is a plan. It's called a long-term care policy. But the catch is that you have to apply for this policy prior to diagnosis. You can't purchase it after your family member is diagnosed. So he actually gave me an example of a lady in her 40s that was taking care of mom. And she said, just going by the history of the medical history, the illnesses in the family, the lady said she wanted to take this long-term care plan. And it worked well in her interest because mom was diagnosed some years later, and she needed to use that, private care. She needed overnight respite care. So it was very handy. And he said, yeah, that's an option. Every company and every policy will vary in its coverage and the limits. So that's something for caregivers to plan for in advance. So there's this whole kit, advanced planning kit. There's only so much I could cover in this conversation. I haven't talked about a few things that we could spend another couple of hours talking about. But yeah, so it's part of your advanced planning to do some of the insurance coverage and the power of attorneys and the wills and all that.
That's great. Thank you. Oh, wait, sorry. Just one other question popped up. Is this plan only for the person with dementia?
No, it covers any illness from what I understood. And he explained it very clearly. What he said was for any illness, it's not necessarily for dementia. It's for a diagnosis of a medical illness. So whatever your costs are associated with that, diagnosis and treatment. Yeah.
Thank you. That's great. Thank you very much, Vinitha. And again, if any questions come up for you about the safety issues or concerns, you have my contact information on the emails, and either Vinitha or I can get back to you. Thank you for coming to week 6. And next week, June Remar will be presenting on long-term care, what it is, what you need to be eligible for long-term care. And she's going to be talking a bit about the current situation due to COVID, but it does change on a regular basis. So she can't speak to it with great authority, but she can only speak to it where it is today. So thank you very much for coming, and we'll see everybody next week. Goodbye.
Good night.